All right, so we're going to take everything that we've learned up to this point and we're going to build a project called EdgeLedger, which is a website for a fictional financial company. And this is actually a remake. If you took this course already before April of 2020, you might notice the site looks different. I actually have the older version open up right here, which you can see definitely doesn't look as good. The font, the big showcase image is actually too long, takes up too much space. It should, right when you scroll, it should end. So we didn't really do the overlay the way that I would want to. The nav bar it doesn't look as good, and it's just there's not that much here. We did use Google Maps, and unfortunately, about a month after I released the course, the Google API required you to put a credit card in, and a lot of people complained about that, so I removed that part of it. So if we take a look at the new version, you can see it looks much cleaner. If we start to scroll down, the nav bar actually goes from being completely transparent to having a transparent background, or a slightly transparent background. And we're going to add some JavaScript for that effect towards the end of the project. So under the main showcase area, we have some font awesome icons we're going to style. We're going to use Flexbox to align everything. We have this area here, the solutions area. We're going to have a lot of utility classes. So for buttons and backgrounds and even flex items and stuff like that, we're going to create utility classes that we can reuse throughout the website. And that's kind of how I like to build websites and UIs, is basically like a mini framework. And then down here we have our cases, which is like an image gallery. We're even going to implement a small lightbox library, so we can click on an image, we can pull that up, and we can actually scroll through them. And we have some text down here as well. Okay, so underneath that we have the blog section, which again is similar to this right here. So we'll have a lot of utility classes that we'll be able to reuse. Then we have our team area. We have the request callback form, and then we have the social icons in the footer here. And if we click on the read our blog, it'll actually take us to a new page with some blog posts that have that same kind of format with the boxes here. And if we click on read more, it'll actually take us to one more page that we'll create, which is just a very simple post page. Okay, and it's completely responsive, so we'll go ahead and open up our device toolbar, and we're going to add media queries so that this looks good on mobile screens as well. Okay, so the nav bar fits nicely in there. Everything's nice and stacked. Even the light box will open up right in there. So yeah, that's what we'll be building. Now in the next section, after we actually build this project, I show you how we can deploy this to a shared host. And you'll notice that when we deploy, it'll be the old version, but everything is the same. Everything still applies as far as deployment. Even the form, I show you how to create a very simple PHP contact form so that we can actually make this form at the bottom work. Okay, so everything will be the same, but you'll notice that it'll be the old version of the website. Okay, so that's it. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so we're going to get started, and I'm just going to have the final project open here in case there's something we need to reference. And we're going to start basically top to bottom. I want to do the whole hero image and nav bar first, so we'll do the HTML for that, and then we'll jump to the styling, and then we'll move on and go section by section. So I'm going to open up VS Code, and I have all the images already in here, and you can get these in the section resources. And you can see I have them all in categories. So we have the blog images, the cases, the home images, the team, and we have a favicon PNG here that we're going to implement later. We're actually going to convert it to an ICO file and use that as our favicon. So let's go ahead and create in the root here index.html, which obviously is our home page, our main landing page. And then we'll create the other HTML pages later. Let's create the CSS folder. And inside there we'll create a style.css. Now, like I said in the intro, we're going to be using a lot of utility classes like for buttons and backgrounds and stuff like that, almost like a built-in framework, so we can just throw these classes in where we need them. So I'm actually going to have two style sheets. I'm going to create another one called utilities.css, and classes that we'll reuse as utilities will go in here for buttons, text, background, stuff like that. Okay, so we'll have two CSS files. Now let's create a boilerplate in our HTML. So exclamation enter, and let's say welcome to EdgeLedger for our title. and then we want to link in both of our style sheets. Now the utilities CSS we want to put first, and then under that the main style CSS. That way if we have to overwrite any of the utility styling, we can do that in our style CSS. Now we're also going to be using Font Awesome, so we want to excuse me, we want to grab that real quick. I'm going to go to cdnjs.com and just search for font and grab this right here. Click on the CSS version and grab the link for the all.min.css file. So if we say copy link tag, copy that, we can close that up and then just paste that right in the head, and we should be all set for now as far as the head goes. So for the body, we're going to have an HTML5 header tag, and I'm going to give this a class of hero. So this is basically the entire, everything above the fold, the main image, and also the nav bar will be within the header. So let's create a div with the class of nav bar. Actually, we'll give this an ID too, because we're going to need it for the little bit of JavaScript that we add later. I mean, we could use a class, but when I take elements from the DOM using JavaScript, I like to use an ID. So within here, we want our logo, so that's going to be an H1. I'll give it a class of logo, and we're going to have our font awesome icon here for our logo, so FAS, and then let's do FA-book-open, and then just a space and EdgeLedger. Okay, now I do want to have the icon or the logo and the word edge. I want those to be green, as you can see right here. So we're going to use a utility class called text primary that we'll create later on. So let's actually surround this in a span. Okay, we definitely want to use a span, because if we use a div, which is a block level element, the word ledger is going to be put on the next line, and we don't want that. So the span, I'm going to give a class of text primary, and that's our logo. So under the H1, we're going to have a nav with a UL and have our list items with links, and these are just going to go to areas on the page. So if we do hash home or # home, that's going to go to an ID of home on the page. Okay, so we'll say home, and I actually want that to go to the very top, so I'm going to give the body an ID of home. And then we'll just go ahead and copy this down. We want 5 links. So after home, we'll have about, and we want that to go to the ID of about. Then we'll have cases. Underneath cases is going to be the blog section, which will go to the ID of blog, and then we'll have the contact. Okay, so that's it for the nav bar. Now, as far as the content in the header, like the sky is the limit heading and all that, that's going to go under this nav bar div. So we want to go under that and have a class of content. And here we'll have our H1. Say the sky is the limit, and we'll do a paragraph here, and let's say we provide world-class financial assistance. And then underneath that, we're going to have a link that's formatted as a button. So it'll be an A tag, but let's give it a class of BTN. And this is just going to go to the About section. And we'll say read more. Let's actually put an icon in here, though. So I'm going to put an I tag with the class of FAS, and then a chevron. So it's, what is it, FA-chevron-right. So we'll just put that little icon in there. And that should be it as far as the HTML. So we can open this up with Live Server. Okay, so that's what it's going to look like now, which doesn't look too good. So we're going to jump into the CSS, into style.css, and we're going to start with just the base styles, like the body, the links, stuff like that. Basically global styles. Now we are going to use the Open Sans font, so we want to go to fonts.google.com, and let's search for Open Sans, which is right here, and I'm going to grab the light 300 So select style, and then also the regular 400. And then over here we can click embed, and you can either grab the link and put it in your HTML, or the import, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this import and copy that, and then we'll put that in our style sheet. Okay, so let's add some base styles here. So we want to add box sizing border box on everything so that the width doesn't, padding doesn't take up the width. We want to just reset the padding and margin, so we're going to set both of those to 0 on everything. And then for the body, let's add the font family, which is going to be Open Sans and sans serif. And for the background, let's make that white by default, and the color of the text will be dark gray, almost black. And then I like to usually do a line height of 1.5, 1.6 for the body. And then for ULs, I don't want any bullet points, so we want to set the list style to none. And on links, so we'll just make the default color dark gray, and then let's remove the underline with text decoration none. Okay, so this applies to all links. And then H1s and H2s, so large headings, I want to make it a light font weight, so we're going to set that to 300. And then I'm just going to lessen the line height for headings, large headings. We'll do 1.2. That way, if they go onto multiple lines, the words aren't too far apart vertically. And then for paragraph, remember we took away all the margins, so I'm going to add 10 pixels on the top and bottom. And then any images, I want to have a width of 100% of their container by default. So those are the base styles. Now we do want to do the nav bar, so we'll do that here. But I want to add the text classes. We have that text primary class to our utilities. So let's just put a comment here and say text styles or text colors. And we have text primary. So that's just going to have a color. It's going to be our green color, which is hexadecimal 28A745. It's going to be that color. And then we'll have a text secondary as well, which will be a blue color. So we'll set that to hexadecimal 0284D0. And that will be our secondary. So now if we take a look here, you can see we have that green. Now for the nav bar, remember the nav bar has two items in it. It has the H1 and it has the UL. So we want to set that to a Flexbox because we want those to align in a row. And we want the UL to be way over here. Now the UL itself will also be a Flexbox so that these list items can, float horizontally as well. So let's go to our style CSS and let's just put a comment here, say nav bar. So the nav bar is, like I said, it's going to be a Flexbox, so we want to set the display property to flex, and let's align everything. Since it's a row, align items does the cross axis, which is going to be vertical. So we want to align center, and then as far as justify content, which aligns on the main axis, we're going to set that to space between because we want the H1 to be on one side and the UL to be on the other. So if I go ahead and save that, now you can see the UL is way over here and the logo is over here because we have space between for justify content. Now as far as the background, we'll set the background color to, let's do 333, and then the color will be white. And I am going to make it a little bit see-through, add some, it's going to be a little translucent, so we'll set opacity to 0.8. You don't have to, but I think it gives it a nice effect. We want the width to be 100%, and the height is going to be 70 pixels, which is pretty common for a nav bar. And we want to position this, we want it to stick to the top, so we're going to position this in a fixed position, and from the top 0 pixels. Okay, so it will always be stuck to the top. And then we want a little bit of padding on the sides so that the logo and the UL aren't right up against the sides. So we'll do 30 pixels on the right and left, and that should do it for now. So if I save that, that's what it's going to look like. Now the links over here you can see are still vertical. We also can't see them because they're the same color as the background. So let's fix that. So first of all, let's say navbar, any A tags, we're going to color those white. And then we have our UL, and we want to display that as flex so that the list items align in a row. And that's pretty much all we need for the UL. Now for the A tags, we want to space them out, because if we take a look, you can see they're all, you know, squished up against each other. So let's add padding. I'm going to set padding to, let's do 10 pixels top and bottom, 20 left and right, and then also margin on the left and right, 5 pixels. And yeah, that should do it. So if we take a look at that, that looks pretty good. Now I do want to have a hover effect. I'm going to add a border bottom on hover. So let's go right here and say navbar : hover, and we'll say border bottom. And as far as the color, I'm going to use this same text, this primary color right here, and put that in. Of course we need the width, which will be 2 pixels, and the style, which will be solid. And if we hover over these links, okay, that's not working. Oh, I put navbar hover. It should be navbar A hover. And there we go. All right, cool. So I think that's pretty much it for the navbar. Oh, one thing I do want to do is bold the logo a little bit, make the font weight a little bigger. So let's say navbar, and that H1 has a class of logo, and I'm just going to set the font weight from 300 to 400, and now it's a little more bold. Okay, so in the next video we're going to go ahead and do the hero image. We're going to add the background. We're actually going to use a pseudo selector called before, because you can use after and before to create an overlay, because we don't want the bright image, we want to have this dark overlay over it. So we'll be doing that in the next video. Okay, so now we're going to create our main hero image with the overlay. So let's jump back into our style sheet here, and I'm going to go under the navbar styling. Let's just say header, and our header has a class of hero. So for the background, we want an image, so we're going to say URL, and let's put in here the location of the image, which is up one level in images, and then in home, and I called it showcase. Showcase, I don't know why it's not popping up here. Showcase JPEG. I think that's correct, right? So we go images, home, yep, showcase. Okay, so we want to add some other background properties. Let's say no repeat, and let's center. So for the background position, we want to center it on the X and Y axis, and then we also want it to cover in terms of the background size. Now I want the height of this hero class, this header, to be the entire viewport, so 100 viewport heights. And I'm going to add a position relative, and I'll explain that a little later when we do the overlay. And then the color set to white. Okay, so if we take a look at that, it's not showing for some reason. Let's see, background URL, oh, images. Okay, so we get the background image, but notice that it's pretty bright. If we look at the final version, it's much darker because we have to create that overlay. And I didn't want to just, you know, make it darker in Photoshop or something like that. We want to do it through CSS. But before we even get to the overlay, I want to position the content, because right now it's just behind the nav bar. We want it to be in the center here. And we can center it pretty easily with Flexbox. So let's grab the content. So we have hero content, and we want to display flex, and instead of being a row, because if it's a row, you can see that now if you look behind the nav bar, that stuff is all like it's aligned horizontally, and we don't want that. So we're going to change the direction to column. Okay, so that'll put it back to going vertical, and then we can use align items center and justify content center, and let's also align the text center. Now if we take a look, you can see it is aligned this way, so it's aligned on the cross axis, because remember this is a flex column, so this is the main axis, this is the cross. So align items, put it in the center here. Justify content should put it in the center here, but the reason it's not is because there's no height. So what we'll do, since the parent, which is the hero, has a height of 100 viewport heights, we'll set the height of this to 100% of its container. So if I go ahead and do that, now it's right in the middle. Okay, so before we move on to the overlay, I just want to style this because obviously this doesn't look very good. So let's do the H1. Actually, I'm sorry, there's some other stuff I want to do here. Well, I just want to add some padding. So let's say padding. Let's do 20 pixels on each side, just so it doesn't, rub up against the side on smaller screens. So hero content H1. I'm going to make this pretty large, so let's do font size 55 pixels. And then the paragraph, so hero content paragraph. I'm going to set the font size on this to be a little larger. Let's do 23 pixels, and I want to set a max width so that the paragraph doesn't extend too far out. So I'll set that to 600 pixels. And then let's set margin. We'll do 20 pixels top, 0 left and right, 30 bottom. So we'll take a look at that. That looks pretty good. Now as far as this link goes, it has a class of BTN. Now BTN is going to be a utility class that we can reuse. So we don't want to do, hero BTN, because then it only applies to the hero. So in utilities, we're going to go ahead and add our button. So let's say button BTN. So first of all, I'm going to set the cursor to a pointer, and then we want to set the display from inline to inline block, and we're going to add some padding to it. So let's do 10 pixels top and bottom, 30 left and right. Let's set the color to white. Let's set the, what do we want to do? Let's do background. So the background color I'm going to set to the primary color by default, which is this here. Okay, and then let's go ahead and set the border to none, and then we'll add a little bit of a curve on the corners. So border radius, we'll do 5 pixels. All right, now for the hover, so let's say button hover. We could change the color, we could do a few different things. I'm just going to change the opacity and make it more see-through, so we'll do 0.9, just make it slightly translucent. And then I also want to have other button classes for different colors as well if we want. So let's create a BTN. So BTN primary. Actually, we don't really need the primary because we're using that as the default, but we'll go ahead and just add it here anyway. So we want the background to be that color and the color to be white. So if you want to use BTN primary and get rid of this, you can, but I'm just going to keep it this way. So we can, it's just optional if we want to use this. Now we want some other button classes as well. So let's have BTN secondary. So it's almost like creating your own framework, your own CSS framework, because these are classes similar to what you'd see in like Bootstrap. So the secondary color is going to be that, and then I'm also going to do a BTN dark where the background color is 333, and then let's also do light, button light, where the color is light gray, but the background's light gray, but the color is dark. Okay, so those are our button utility classes. So if we take a look, you can see now we have our button, we have that opacity effect when we hover over it. So now we're ready to create our overlay. And like I said, we're going to be using a pseudo selector called before. So in our style sheet here, style CSS, let's go ahead and say hero. And the way we want to use this is we want to do double colon and then before. Now there's before and there's after. And what this does is it allows us to insert content before or after this element. So we can have this content property and we can actually put text in here like hello. And if I save this and I go back, you'll see up here in the corner behind the nav bar, it has the text hello, which we just inserted using CSS. Now I don't want to put actual content like text, so we just want to leave that blank. We do need this property, but we're going to leave this as just an empty string. Okay, now what we do want to do is create an overlay. So basically put a color over it, over the entire thing. So we want to position this to be absolute within hero. That's why up here I put position relative. Because remember, with positioning, if you have something absolute within a parent, the parent has to be position relative. And as far as placement, let's put it, we'll say top 0, left 0, and then we want it to cover the entire thing, so 100% width and 100% height. And then if we set the background, let's say we'll say background red for now, and let's take a look, and we just have this large red overlay. So this is covering everything. It starts here and it's 100% width, 100% height, and it covers everything. Now, in order to make this transparent, we could use opacity, or we could use an RGBA value, so red, green, blue, alpha, and set it to black, 000, and then we'll do 0.6 for the transparency. So if I save that and we take a look, now we have an overlay. Now, one problem that you can see here is that the text and the button, it's behind the overlay. So we need to move that forward, and we can do that with the z-index property. So z-index is just the level of where it is from front to back. So right now the content is behind the overlay, so it has a lower z-index. And your z-index can be any number, it can be negative or positive. So what I'll do here is I'll say anything that is in hero, let's set the z-index to, we'll set it to 10, so we should be safe with 10. And now if we take a look, the content is in front of the overlay. Okay, this is because the higher the z-index, the closer to you it is, the closer to the screen. If it's a lower z-index, then the further back it is. Okay, so I mean that's pretty much it as far as the top part of our website. So in the next video, we're going to start on these sections down here. We'll create some flex items and do this part here as well, and we'll go from there. Okay, so the top part of our site is complete. Like I said, we'll add the JavaScript for this later on where this is transparent. But now we want to do this icons section and this solutions section. So we're going to be using Flexbox to align everything. So let's jump into our HTML first and add that. So I'm going to go under the header. And I'm actually going to use a main tag here, and all of our sections aside from the footer will go inside this main tag. So our first section here, I'm going to give an ID of about so that our menu goes to it, and then let's give it a class of icons, and we're going to have background classes as well, utility classes, and I want this to be light. So I'm going to use a class of BG light, and we'll create that in a second. And then for anything that we just want, simple Flexbox rows, I'm going to have a utility class called Flex Items that we put directly on, as the Flex container. So we're going to have some divs, and in the div we'll have an icon. Let's give this, let's say FAS, and then FA-University. So that's our icon that we're going to use. I'm also going to give it a class of FA-2X, which will make it twice as large. All right, and then underneath that we'll have a div with an H3. So this is just going to be like a heading. We'll say investment investment banking, and then a paragraph, and let's just do lorem 10 for the paragraph. So that's the style of the format of each flex item. So we want to copy this down twice. The second icon is going to be book reader, and we just want to change the heading up here as well. So let's say investment, no, we already did that. Let's say portfolio manager. Okay, then this third icon here is going to be pencil dash alt, and for the heading, let's say tax and custodial. Okay, so if we take a look at that, doesn't look too good, but we'll fix that. So let's jump into the CSS. So we're going to go into style CSS first, and any direct styling for the icons class will go here. So let's say icons, and I just want to add some padding, so we'll do 30 pixels for the whole thing. And then for the H3, let's say icons H3, I just want to bold the font, so we'll set font weight to let's do 400. No, we'll do bold, and then add some margin to the bottom, so 15 pixels. Now for the icons, I want to style them so that so icons I, the font awesome icons, I want to style them so that they have this round background. So let's go ahead and set the background color to our green. And I mean, we probably should be using variables or custom properties for this because we're reusing the colors, but I haven't gone over those yet. Those are going to come in a later section. So let's say color white, and we want padding, so we want some spacing around it, so 16, actually we'll do 1 rem, which in this case will be 16 pixels because that's the root element font size. Border radius, I'm going to set that to 50%, and then let's set a margin bottom of 15 pixels. Okay, so if we take a look at our icons now, we have this green round background. Now we want to deal with our Flexbox because we want these aligned in a row. So in our utilities, I'm gonna style the flex items class that we used. So let's say flex items, and we want to display flex, and let's go ahead and text align center and justify content center, and also text align center. Okay, so pretty simple, and I'm just going to set the height to 100%, and then add some padding to the divs inside. So let's say flex items, and we can say the direct div. So basically the direct div child, we're going to set a padding of 20 pixels. So let's take a look at that, and there we go. So that looks pretty good. Yeah. So the next thing that we're going to do is this section here. And for these 2 column layouts, you'll see this looks similar to this one, which looks similar to this one. So we're going to have a utility class called Flex Columns for these, because it's going to be slightly different than how we style the 3 we just did. So let's jump into our HTML. We want to go right under where we did the about. Actually, let's put some comments here. So that's about icons. And then under this section, this is part of the about section, this is the solutions. So we want to add a section here, and let's give this a class of solutions and also a class of flex-columns. And then within here, let's create a row. So take note of the structure of this. We're going to have a row with 2 column divs, so we'll say column times 2, and then inside this column will have a div called column 1, and in this one here we'll have a div with column 2. Alright, so this first one is going to be the image. So let's add that. We'll say image, and we want to go into images slash home and then people. That's all we want in column 1. Column 2, we're going to have an H4. We'll say what you are looking for, and then an H2. And we'll say we provide bespoke solutions, and then a paragraph, and let's do lorem 20, I believe I did, or lorem 30, I don't know, we'll see how it looks. So that's column 2, and actually under the paragraph we do want a link formatted as a button. We'll use BTN. I'm also going to have a BTN outline class as well, and we'll just put the text of read more, but let's put an icon as well of a chevron. So we'll do FAS, FA dash chevron. Make sure there's a space after it. Alright, so if we take a look at that, we just have a stretched out image, because remember it's width 100% by default. We set that in our style CSS, and then we have our content down here. So let's go ahead and style the flex columns, so this class right here. So we're going to go to utilities, and let's go under where we have our flex items. And I'm only creating this utility class because we're doing a few different sections that have this same exact styling. So let's say flex columns, and we want to style the row, and say display flex, and the flex direction is going to be a row, which is default, so we don't really need that, but we'll specify it anyway. We want the flex wrap to be wrap, and we want width to be 100%. Okay, and then for the columns, let's say flex columns, and then we have the class of column. We also want to display flex here, but we want the flex direction obviously to be a column. And we're going to set the basis, so basically the default, we're going to set that to 100% and set it to flex 1, so it'll take up the entire height. And then for column 1 and column 2, say column 1, and then we'll copy that down. Column 2, we want the height, make sure we set that to 100% as well. So let's take a look at what that looks like. Good. Now I want this to have a green background. So one thing I forgot in the HTML is to add, let's see, we want to put this on column 2, so BG primary, and by doing that it should be green or not. Oh, we didn't do the background classes yet, did we? So let's quickly add those in our utilities. Now we already have the button classes, and the BG classes are going to have the same exact thing, the background color with the text color. So what I'll do, what I'll do is just excuse me, we'll say BG primary, and let's go here, we'll say class BG secondary. We'll have a BG dark, and a BG light. Alright, so now if we take a look, we have that green background, and it doesn't go all the way down just yet. We'll do that when we get to the column 2 styling. But for the image, I just want to do the image first, because if we go to, you know, a certain width, you can see the image starts to go up. We want it to fill this entire area. So let's go back to, let's see, go back down here. Oh, we had a colon there. But that should, okay, so oh, now it fills, yeah, now it fills the whole height. But as far as the image goes, to fix that, let's say flex columns image, and set make sure the width is 100%, the height is 100%, and if we take a look, the width and the height are 100%, but see how it looks all stretched out? We can easily fix that with a property called object fit, and we can set that to cover, which it works similar to background size cover with a background image. So if we look now, you'll see that it takes up the whole area, but it's not stretched out. It just covers it. All right, so that's what we want. Now, as far as column 2, let's style that. Whoops, flex columns, and let's do column 2. And we want this to display flex so we can align it. Display flex. We also want the direction to be a column. And then we want to align items center, and let's align items to flex start. Since it's a column, align items has to do with the horizontal. Okay, and then justify content is going to be center. Okay, so we'll center that, and then just add some padding, and we should be good. Alright, now we do want to style some of the individual elements here. So the H2 I'm going to make bigger. I'm also going to add some margin, and we got to take care of this button outline class that we created, or that we used. So let's say flex columns H2, and set a font size of 40 pixels, and let's make the font weight 100, and that's it for the H2. The H4, let's add a margin bottom of 10 pixels, and then the paragraph, so flex columns paragraph, I want to add 20 pixels margin on the top and bottom. So if we save that, okay, that all looks good. Now for the button here, I just want to have a border, and I want a transparent background, so just an outline. So let's go to Style CSS up to where we have, not Style, Utilities, up to where we have our buttons, and let's add a BTN outline, and we'll set the background to transparent, and set a border of 1 pixel solid and white. Okay, so that'll be our button outline. Let's take a look. Good. So that takes care of the icons, that takes care of this. Now when we make this smaller, it doesn't look too good. Later on we're going to add media queries so that, you know, everything stacks and the navigation looks better, but we're going to do the desktop version first. Okay, in the next video we'll go ahead and we'll do the cases and hopefully get to the blog section as well, which should be really easy because it's the same style as this, except we want the image on this side. Alright, so we'll get to that next. Okay, so now we want to start on our cases, which is basically our photo gallery section, and also the blog section. So let's go into our HTML, and under the solutions, let's say cases, and we'll have a section. We're going to give this an ID of cases because it's part of the menu, and then a class of cases, and we're going to use a class called Flex Grid, and also a class of section padding. Now in here we're going to have a header with a class of section header, and headers don't have to be just for, you know, the main website header. You can use them for articles or for whatever. And in here we're going to have an H4 and say this is what we do. Underneath that we'll have an H2 and let's say business cases, then a paragraph, and we'll do lorem 10 here. So that's our header. Now underneath that we're going to have our row, so class of row, and then a column. Column. So within each column we're actually going to have 2 images. So let's have our first image here, which is going to be, say, images/cases, and then cases 1, and then the second one will be cases 2. And then we'll just grab this column. So we're going to have 4 columns. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, with 2 images each. So this will be image 3, or cases 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, so that should be it as far as the HTML goes here. So we'll save that, and if we take a look, we're just going to have large stretched out images. And this is the header, which also we need to style. So let's go into style CSS, and as far as what we need to do here, actually the only thing we need to do here is for the image, I want to add a hover effect and set the opacity to, let's do 0.7. Okay, so we just have that hover effect. The rest of the stuff is going to basically it's going to be for the header, the section header, and then the grid. So let's go into utilities, because we're going to reuse these classes later. Anything that we're going to reuse is going to go into utilities. So let's do the section header first. So section header, we're going to add padding, 30 pixels. Let's display flex, but we're going to change it to a column. So flex direction column, and we want to align everything to the center. So align items to the center. We want to set the justify content to the center and text align to the center. So if we take a look at that, everything is now centered. And then let's style the H2. So section header H2. Let's give that a font size of 40 pixels, and then let's add margin. We'll say 20 pixels on the top and bottom. Now we also have a class of section padding, so I'm going to add that as well. Oops. So section padding, and let's do 20 on the top. Yeah, we'll do 20, 20 left and right, 40 on the bottom. So if we take a look, good. Now we want to do the Flex Grid class that we created that has a row and a column class in it. So right here we'll say Flex Grid. And we want to style the row, so as a class of row, and we're going to display flex and set the flex wrap, and let's just say padding 4 pixels on the sides. So that's the row, and then for the column, let's say flex grid column. We want these to have we want these to be 25% each, because remember there's 4 images across. I mean, there's 8 images, but we have 2 in each column. Whoops, that shouldn't be column 2. That should just be column. So flex grid column, we're going to set the flex to a percentage. So instead of like flex 1 or whatever, let's do 25% and make sure that we have a max width of 25% so it doesn't go over that. And then add padding on the sides, 4 pixels. Alright, now we want to do, so take a look at this. So it looks pretty good actually. Yeah, so we'll just keep that. If we make this smaller, you know, the images get real small, but we're gonna, like I said, we're going to add media queries later to stack everything on top of each other. So that should do it for that. Now the next section is this blog section, which is very similar to the solutions. So what we'll do is in our HTML, let's just copy the solutions section and paste that in here, and this is going to be blog. We're just going to change, first of all, let's add an ID of blog because we have the menu pointing to it, and then also the class, say blog, and then we just have to change, basically change the content. So the image here will be in home blog, and then for the text, it's going to be formatted the same way, but we'll just change the actual content. Let's say April 16, 2020. So we'll just pretend that this is like a teaser for the first blog post or the latest blog post, whatever. And we'll leave this. We'll just say read our blog. Now I do want the image to be on the other side. We could change the HTML, like we could take this image, put it here, put the text here, but I don't want to do that. I'd rather just add a class of Flex Reverse. So if I add that, let's go to Utilities, and for Flex Reverse we can just go, so that's Flex Columns, right? So I'm going to go up to the top here, and let's say, so if it's Flex Columns and it has a class of Flex Reverse, then we want the row to change. We want to change the flex direction to row reverse because it's just going to switch it. So if we take a look, now the image is on that side. Now I also want this to be a different color, which we made it really easy to do that because we have utility classes for backgrounds, so we can simply change it to secondary or dark or whatever you want. So now we have that blue background. So I mean, hopefully you can see the pattern here. We just create these classes that we can reuse whenever we want these specific types of layouts. So the next one is the team, which again has a section header, which is identical to this section header. Alright, so that will make it easy to do that. And then we just have these flex items, so we can use the flex items class that we used here with the icons. Okay, so it makes it really easy to just keep adding sections. So in the next video we'll go ahead and get into those. Okay, so now we're going to do the team section. So I'm going to go under the blog, and we can actually copy, since we're using the header and all that, we can copy the cases and paste that in here. So say team. So we're going to give this, we'll give this an ID of team, even though I don't think we have it in the menu. But let's go ahead and add a class of team, and let's see, we're not using Flex Grid, but we are going to use section padding and section header. And we'll just change the content up. So H4 will say who we are. And let's change this. We'll say our professional team, and we'll keep that text. Now for the images, we're actually going to use, we can get rid of this row because we're not using Flex Grid, we're using Flex Items. So same thing we did with the icons. So we'll have a div with an image, and it's going to be images / team person1. Underneath the image, let's do H4 and John Doe, and then paragraph, this will be the person's position, so president. We're going to have 3 of these. So this will be person 2. We'll say Jane Doe, and we'll say vice president, person 3. Say Steve Smith. I know I'm real creative with my names. And let's say marketing head. Alright, so just doing that, if we take a look, excuse me, it looks pretty good because we already have those classes in place. Now I do want to round the corners of these images, make these kind of circular. So in our style sheet, I'm just going to say class of team, image, set the border radius, let's do 50%, And there we go. So that's it for the team. So for the, what's next? The contact section here. We're going to use the same layout as this and this. Actually, we'll probably copy this because we're going to have the image on the left. So it's left, right, left. So let's just copy the, whoops, let's copy the solutions. So we'll grab this. And let's put that right here. So this is the contact section. So we'll say contact, and let's give it an ID of contact and a class. And we're going to be using this flex columns here as well. So we want the row, the column, column 1. The image, however, is going to be contact. And then this content, I mean, we're going to keep the column 2. I'm actually going to use BG Light. And we want to turn this into a form so we can get rid of the headings and stuff like that. So everything within column 2. And then let's create a form, give it a class of callback form. And action, we'll just keep that empty for now. And then in the form, let's go ahead and add a form, let's say form control class. So every label and input will be wrapped in a form control class. Let's say label for name, and the input, let's say input, we'll give it an ID of name, and we'll give it a name of name. And then the placeholder, set that to name. Now this isn't going to actually submit anywhere by default. I might do something later on. I believe in the next section we did do a PHP script. I might change that up because, like I said, I'm redoing this project, but I do have a way where we put this to a shared host and then we add a simple PHP script to submit the form. But I might change that up. I don't know. So let's copy this down 3 times because we're going to have name, email. We'll change the type of this to email as well. And then change that to email, the ID, and then the placeholder. Actually, placeholder should say like enter email, and this should say enter name. And then this one is going to be phone, text, phone ID is phone, and then placeholder will say enter phone. Okay, and then we just need a submit button. So under this div here, let's say input, and we can say colon submit, give us type submit, we'll say send, we'll give it an ID of submit, and let's give it a class of btn. Oops. All right, so if we take a look at this, the image is not showing up for some reason. Images, oh, I have 2 JPEGs. All right, so we have the image, so the layout is good, but the form looks horrible, so we obviously want to change that. So we're going to style it. I also want a header right above the form, or heading, I should say. So let's do an H2, and we'll say request callback. Okay, so as far as the form goes, let's go ahead and style that. So in style CSS, say callback form, and it has a class of callback form, and we're going to set the width to 100% of its container, some padding on the top and bottom, and then let's go ahead and style the label. So callback form label, by default labels are inline, but we want the label to be block so that it's on a new line. So let's say display block, and then just give it some margin on the bottom to push the input down. So say margin bottom 5 pixels, and then each form control, so callback form control. Okay, so that wraps the label in the input. I just want to add a margin bottom of 15 pixels to push everything down. Okay, and then the input themselves, so that those are really important to style because they're very ugly by default. So let's say input, callback form input, set the width to 100%. We'll set the padding to 4 pixels, and let's give a height of 40 pixels, and the border we'll do light gray, 1 pixel, solid. And the button, so we'll say callback form BTN. I just want to I want to add some extra padding to that, so we'll say 12 pixels top and bottom, and then push down. I want to push the button down, so let's say margin top 20 pixels. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Now when I click inside of it, we get this blue outline. If you want that, that's fine, but I can show you how we can change that color. So we can actually do that by, let's go right here and say callback form input, and we want the focus state, and then we can set the outline color, and we'll set that, let's set it to the green, so this right here. Okay, so now if we go and we click, now we get that green outline, and you can set it to outline 0 if you don't want it at all. So the last thing is the footer, so we might as well do that because it's pretty simple. So we'll go ahead and add the HTML. So we actually want to go under the main because the footer isn't part of the main. So let's say footer, and let's give footer a class of footer, and also BG dark because I want to give it the dark background. And then we're going to have a div called social. Okay, so this is where our social icons will go. They'll have a link around them, which would go to your, like, you know, your profile. And let's put an icon here. So FAB, you need to use a class of FAB for social icons. And then let's do FA Facebook. And then we'll copy this down a few times. So we'll do Facebook, we'll do Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And then under that div, we're going to have a paragraph with copyright. We'll use an HTML entity, so ampersand copy semicolon 2020, and we'll say EdgeLedger. Okay, so that's what it's going to look like. So obviously we have a little bit of styling to do here. So let's go to Style CSS. Okay, and let's add a class of footer. We want to display this as a Flexbox, and I actually want it to be a column, so flex direction column, because all we're doing, if we look at the final version here, we're going to have it in a column but center it in the footer. If you wanted to, you could have a row and you could have the icons over here and the text over here, but I think that this looks fine if we do it this way. We can't even see the icons right now because we need to change the color. So let's go back here and let's say footer. So any links, obviously we want to be able to see those. And then back up here, let's center everything. So align items center, justify content center, text align center, and let's set the height of the footer to 200, and regardless of the height it should be centered vertically and horizontal. Alright, let's see, so the icons are really small, so I'm actually going to add to those the class of FA2X. So we'll just grab that. Okay, and then I also want to add some margin between them because they're very close together. So what I'll do is I'll say, let's say footer, and then inside the social div, just in case they're not links and you put divs or something else, let's just say anything within there, we want to set margin right to 30 pixels. And then on the hover, let's say footer. So footer on the link hovers, I want to change the color to that green color. Okay, so if we put that in here, and let's take a look, good, and if we hover over these, we get that green color. Okay, so that's the base styling of our landing page. So I think what I want to do in the next video, before we do the other two simple pages, is make this responsive, because if I make this smaller, it's not too bad. I mean, this looks fine. The nav bar obviously does not. This is too squished together. This is too squished. We would just want to stack all this stuff. So it's not going to be too difficult. So in the next video, we'll go ahead and get to the media queries. Alright guys, so we're going to go ahead and add our media queries now to make this responsive and look good. And all of our media queries are going to go in our style sheet. Actually, we only have one. We just want to have some styles for anything that's under 768 pixels. So basically a tablet or less. So let's go down here and we'll just say mobile. And we want a media query, so we want @media, and I'm going to do a max width of 768 pixels. So basically anytime the screen is smaller than 768, these styles will kick in. So let's start with the nav bar. Okay, because right now we can see the links are going off the screen. So remember, it's a flex row. So what I'll do is I'll change the flex direction to a column. And immediately they're on top of each other, the logo and the UL. So I'm just going to set align items to center. We'll set align items to center, and let's set I'm sorry, not align items, justify. What did I have here? So I had nav bar, align items center. Okay, justify content is space. I guess we don't have to do anything with that. So forget that. Now the height, I'm going to change to 120 pixels because it needs to be higher now because obviously we have the logo on top of the links. And then let's add some padding. Let's say padding 20 pixels. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Now these links are still pretty far apart. On smaller phones, you know, these might kind of run into each other, so let's change the padding on those. So we'll say navbar links. I believe we have 1020, so let's do 1010. Okay, so now you can see the links are closer together. We'll even lessen the margin. So we had 5 pixels, we'll set 3 pixels. So now they're closer together and should look fine on smaller phones. Okay, so navbar looks pretty good, and you could always do like a hamburger menu or something, but this is just a pretty simple solution that doesn't include any JavaScript. Now this, I'm going to keep this. I mean, you could lessen the size of the H2 here if you want, but I think that looks pretty good. Now the flex items, obviously we want to stack these, so flex items. So it's already display flex. We're just going to change the direction to a column. All right, so it's as easy as that. So basically, you know, if this is, when it gets to 768, it just stacks on top of each other. And you could do it different ways. You could, instead of display flex, you could change it to display block or something like that. But I like just changing the direction. Let's see, next we have this. So what's this? Flex columns. Yeah, so flex columns for the actual column. what we'll do is we'll set the flex value, or the flex grow, to 100%, and also the max width to 100%. So if we save that, you can see now these both stack on top of each other. Alright, so that's one way to do it. And we can even do that with the grid. Let's see, so these images right here have flex grid, so I think we could just take flex grid and take the column there, and that will, yeah, that'll stack them on top of each other as well. So if we make this bigger, yeah, I mean, you could add another media query and have them in two. You know, for like 768, you could have them in 2 rows, and then on smaller screens stack them. But I think that's fine. We'll just leave it like that. All right. So what else do we have here? Let's see. This is good because remember that's the flex column. This is good. These are stacked because these are flex items. However, I do want these images to be a little smaller, so what we could do is take the team image, and instead of 100% width, we could do, let's say, 70%. Okay, make them a little smaller. I think that looks a little neater. Maybe we could even do that with the image. I guess that's fine. So this looks good. Footer's fine. I don't think we need to do anything there. So I think we're all set as far as media queries go. So our site looks pretty good on small screens, and we can test it out with the device toolbar as well. So if we open up our Chrome tools and hit this icon here, so that's an iPad. Let's try iPhone X. Okay. Yeah, so I think that looks pretty good. Let's try Galaxy S5. It's even smaller. Still looks good. iPhone 6, 7, 8. Okay, so our site's responsive. Now, in the next video, we're going to create the blog page, which is pretty simple, and also the single blog post page. Okay, so now we're going to create our inner pages. So we have a blog HTML page that we want to create, and also a single post page. So what we'll do is, let's see, let's go into our HTML, and I just want to check out the button. So the blog section, which is right here, this read our blog, the href should go to blog.html. And by the way, we haven't even looked at the navigation. So if I click about, it takes us down, cases, blog, contact, and we'll add some JavaScript to do the smooth scrolling. But if you don't want to add any JavaScript, you can just leave it the way it is if you want. But we'll get to that in a little bit. But let's take care of these inner pages. So if I go to the blog and I click read our blog, it doesn't exist. So we have to create that file. So let's say blog.html. And what we'll do is copy everything from index.html and paste that in. And we're going to get rid of, let's see, we're going to keep the header. We're just going to modify it. So everything that is between, actually everything in the main, we'll go ahead and get rid of for now. So we'll get rid of that, and for the title we'll just say read our blog, and let's see what we want to do here. So this stuff is going to stay the same. Now the hero, I don't want it to take up the entire page, so I'm going to add another class onto the header called blog. And let's see, we want to keep that. Now these here, since we're on a different page, obviously we can't go to the about section. So what we want to do is we want to point to, first of all, home can just go to index.html, right? And then if we want to go to about, we'll go to index.html and then the about section. So basically we just need to prefix all of these with index.html. Like that. And then let's see, for the content, we're just going to have an h1 and just say blog. Alright, now I'm going to save this, and if we go to our blog page, this is obviously way too big, so I want to make this smaller. I also want to change the image. So what we'll do is go into our style sheet. Let's go to Style CSS, and let's go down to where we have our hero, and we're going to add, let's see, we'll go right here and let's say hero. Now if this also has a class of blog, then let's change the background image. And you could do this with other inner pages as well. I have different classes for those different images. So we're going to go up one level into images, and then what is it? Yeah, it's actually, I have it in the home folder. It's the same image that we have on the home for the blog. And then no repeat, center, cover. And I'm going to change it from height of 100 viewport heights to 30 viewport heights. So if I go ahead and save this, and now we take a look, now we just have, a much smaller header. Now for the content, I actually want to structure it like we did with the flex columns. So what I'll do is grab, let's see, from the index page, I'm going to grab the solutions section, and let's go back here, and inside main we're going to go ahead and paste that in here. Let's see, so we have section. Let's actually make this an article instead. So make sure you switch that and the ending tag to article. And we don't need a class of solutions. We do want the flex columns though. And then for the image, let's use images. So this is the first post, so we'll do blog 1 as our image. And for the content, let's see, we don't need, I'm actually going to make this BG light, and then we don't need an H4 because we're just going to have the title, let's just say blog post 1. And then let's see, underneath that though, let's have a paragraph with the class of meta. And this is where we'll put like the user and stuff. So I'm going to put a user icon, so FAS and then FA-user. And then after that, we'll say posted by John Doe. Yeah, actually, let's put strong tags around the name. So John Doe, and we'll put a pipe character here and then the date, say April 19, 2020. And then we'll still have this read more down here as well, but let's make the button, instead of outline, let's say BTN dark, which we should already have. Alright, so if I save that, we take a look, there we go, there's our first blog post. So the second one, I'm going to copy this whole article, and we'll go down, we'll paste that in, and then I'm just going to change the image to blog 2. I'm going to change the background to dark. Let's say blog post 2. We'll change the user to Jane Doe. Change the date. And then for the button, I want to use button light. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, so there we go. So anytime you want to use this styling, it's super easy. So we'll go ahead and copy the first article again, and go under this one and change this to blog 3. I'm going to go back to a dark background, 3. We'll just change the date. We'll keep the same author. and let's do button light, right? Oh, actually I didn't want to change the colors. I want to keep the light because I want them to alternate. So if I save that and we take a look, so we have the light, the dark. We do want the image on the other side though. Actually, it's only the middle that I want the image on this side. So remember, we can just add our reverse class, right? So flex columns, we can just add flex reverse, and now the image is on the other side. Okay, so that's our blog page. Now, if I click on the read more, it should go to a post. So for each link here, let's have it go to post.html. So I'll just copy that, and we want each of these to go to that page. In reality, they would go to different posts, obviously, but they'd all be formatted the same way. So let's create post.html. Now, this is going to be pretty simple as well. Let's see. So we'll copy the blog HTML, and let's paste that in. So I'm going to keep the top here. Let's change the title though to post 1. I'm going to keep all this and this too, so it'll have that same hero image at the top. But then for the main, let's clear everything out of the main. So all these articles will clear out. And then we're just going to have a section here with the class of post, and we'll have an h2 with the title, so blog post 1, and then underneath that we'll have our meta class, which I'll just copy from the blog HTML. So this paragraph right here, I'll also copy the text paragraph, and then we'll just add a couple more paragraphs. Let's say like lorem 60, another paragraph, lorem 50, and then that should do it. So if we take a look at that, if I click read more, it takes us to the post. Now I want to style some of this stuff. I also want the image in there as well. So what we'll do is add, let's see, we'll go under the meta and put image, and let's go to what, images / blog, and we'll take the blog 1 image. Alright, now as far as styling goes, let's go to our style CSS and style the post. So let's go above the footer. So post, I'm going to add padding around the whole thing. We'll do 50 pixels top and bottom, 30 left and right. We're going to do the H2. Post H2, let's say font size 40 pixels. Margin bottom, let's do 20 pixels. Padding bottom, we'll do 10 pixels, and I want to add a border bottom. So border bottom, CCC, solid 1 pixel. So if we look at that, you can see that's our title. We have this underline. For the meta, I just want to push the content under it down. So let's say post meta, margin bottom, say 30 pixels. Now the image is huge, so because by default it's width 100%. So let's change that. So the post image, I'm going to set the width to a fixed 300 pixels, and I'm going to make it rounded. So we'll say border radius 50%. I want to display as a block because I want to put it in the middle without using flex, so we can display block because by default it's inline, and then we'll add margin 0, auto on the left and right, and then 30 on the bottom. So now if we take a look, that's what it's going to look like. Okay, so I mean, you'd probably have like a sidebar with categories and stuff like that if it were a real blog, but this is just something very simple just to add to the site. Okay, so I think we're done as far as, HTML and CSS. Let's just make sure if we make this smaller that the blog page still looks okay. Yeah, so everything is just stacked. If we go to the post, that looks good. All right. So in the next video, we're going to add a little bit of JavaScript. This part is definitely optional. You don't have to do this, but I like the effect of this being totally transparent at the top. And then when you scroll down, the background comes in. Also, we'll implement the Lightbox library so we can open these images up in a Lightbox. All right, so I'll see you in the next video. Okay, so now we want to give this the effect where the navbar is transparent. When we scroll down, then we get the background. So what we'll do here is in our HTML, we're going to start off with the class of navbar and top because it's going to be transparent at the top, right? So we'll go into our style and let's say class navbar, and if it has a class of top, then we're going to set the background. We're going to set the background to transparent. So if I save that and we go, now we have a transparent background. Now it's going to stay transparent, which we don't want. We can't even see it if it goes over white, white background. So we need to add a little bit of JavaScript. So I'm going to put it right in the index.html down at the bottom here. So let's go, it's right below the footer, right above the body tag, and let's put in script tags. So I'm not going to explain this front to back because this is not a JavaScript course. You guys can just copy this if you want, but I'll explain it briefly. So I'm going to grab the navbar and put it into a JavaScript variable called navbar, and we do that with document.getElementById, and that navbar div has an ID of navbar. So I'm just going to grab that. I'm also going to initialize, actually no, we'll do this for now. So then we want to take window.onScroll, which is an event. So we're saying basically when we start scrolling, then we want to run a function. Okay, and then we want to check where we are on the page in terms of scrolling. So we can say if the window dot and then page y offset, because we want to check where we are on the y axis, which is the vertical axis. If that is greater than 100, so if we scroll down past 100 pixels, then let's take our navbar, and for the class list, so basically the class list, we're going to go ahead and remove the class of top. And remember, the class of top is where we make the the transparent background. So we're going to remove that. Else, so if we're basically above 100, so if we're less than 100, then we're going to take the navbar and we're going to take the class list property and the add function. So basically we can add a class here. We're going to add top back. So just this code here should give us that effect. So you'll see as soon as I scroll down past 100, then we get that background. Now I'm going to take it a step further and give it this bounce effect, and we're going to do that using the transform property along with translate, and I haven't explained that yet, so this might be a little confusing. I do get into this later on in the course, so you don't have to do this if you don't want to, but I will show you how I did that. So I'm going to go back to my JavaScript here, and I'm going to initialize a variable here called scrolled and set it to false. So basically what this means is we haven't started scrolling yet. And then down here, after we go ahead and we remove the top class and make it so it has a background, we're going to say if not scrolled, then we want to set the navbar.style, because we can set direct CSS properties from here. We're going to set the transform, and we're going to set that to translate Y, and what translate Y is it does is it moves things along the Y axis, so up and down. We're going to set that to negative 70 pixels so that it basically gets pulled up. So let's see if we can demonstrate this. Yeah, so when I go down and I hit that 100, it goes up. See that? It just kind of disappears actually because we don't have a transition where it's going up slowly. So if we want it to go up slowly, we can add a transition, which is also something I haven't gotten into yet, but we are going to dive into this stuff later. So in our style sheet on our nav bar here, I'm going to add a transition, say transition of 1 second, and let's do ease in. Actually, is that what I want to do? Yeah, we don't even need... Actually, let's do a half a second. Let's just say transition 0.5 seconds. And I'm going to explain, like I said, later on I'll explain this stuff. This is just kind of a bonus that I figured I'd add on. So now when I scroll down, see that? How it goes up smoothly? That's because I added that transition. So it's going up negative 70 pixels. Remember, the height is 70 pixels, so now it's going up and it's disappearing. Now let's go back to our JavaScript. So it went up 70 pixels. Now we want to wait a very short amount of time, like 200 milliseconds, and then bring it back down by setting translate Y back to 0. So we can do that using a function called setTimeout. So setTimeout actually takes in a function, and then it takes as a second parameter the time that we want to wait to run this function, which will be 200 milliseconds. And all I want to do is set this back to 0, which will put it in its original position. And then I'm just going to set that scrolled value to true because we've already scrolled down. Okay, else, then we're still going to do the same thing, but we're going to set scrolled to false. And if you like this kind of stuff, I would definitely recommend my 20 projects course. We do stuff like this. So now let's go ahead and scroll, and you can see that what happens is when we hit 100, we get the background. Also, it translates on the y-axis up, and 200 milliseconds later, which is very quick, it comes back down because we set it back to translate 0. All right, and when we get to the transform, translate, and transition stuff later on, it'll make more sense. Okay, even though it might not make much sense now, but that gives us that effect. Now for the smooth scrolling, because right now it just kind of pops down to the area, I'm going to use a jQuery solution. So we're going to just go to, let's search for jQuery CDN. Now we could download jQuery and include it in our project, but I'm just going to use a CDN, meaning that we're going to load it from their content delivery network. So let's grab the minified version. So we can just copy this script tag right here. And let's put that in our HTML. So we want to go above our custom script and just paste that in. So that'll bring in jQuery. And then I'm just going to paste in this smooth scrolling block of jQuery. So I'm going to go under my custom window scroll here and paste this in. I should have auto format enabled. Let me just check something real quick. Let's say format on save. I thought I had that enabled. There we go. All right, so that fixed how that's formatted. So basically we're just grabbing the nav bar, and when we click any link in it, it's going to look at the link, it's going to look at the hash. So you know how we have hash about, hash home, and it's going to scroll to that. And it's also going to go a little bit above it so that the fixed nav bar doesn't cover it. So let's try this out. We're going to go back to our home page here. Let's click about, and now you'll see it will go down to that section, and it doesn't cover it like it did before because we set it to be 100 pixels above where it's actually supposed to go. Okay, so I mean that's how I implemented those effects for the nav bar. There's a ton of other ways. I mean, there's other libraries you could use without jQuery, but this is a really simple solution. So if you want to add this to your other, your blog page and stuff, because right now if we go to blog, we don't have that functionality. We don't want the smooth scrolling because none of these point to anything else on the page. We just want the effect, the transparency effect. So to implement that, we would just go to our blog HTML and add the top class to our nav bar. Let's add it on the post page as well. So where are we? Nav bar, let's add top. And then we just want that little bit of JavaScript right here. So we don't want the jQuery stuff. We just want this. So blog HTML, we'll go down to the bottom and put in our script, paste that in, and then post. And of course you could put this in a different file if you want. So script and paste that in. So now that should work. If we go to blog, you see it's transparent at the top, and then we get that. If we go to the post page, same thing. All right. So I think we're pretty much there. The last thing to do is the Lightbox. Now this is we're actually going to implement a library called Lightbox 2. So it's this right here. So here's some examples. Let's see. So we're going to have to download it. So if we go to the GitHub, let's grab right here. It says clone or download. We're going to download the zip. And let's open that up. So Lightbox 2 dev. And there's some stuff we need to bring over to our project. So I'm going to just open up my project, if I can find it. Okay, so here's our project, EdgeLedger, and we're going to take inside of dist, we need this stuff here. So in CSS, in our CSS folder, let's bring over lightboxmin.css. So we'll grab the minified version, and then let's see, we're going to create a new folder called JS. And in this JS folder, we just need to grab, let's see, and this does require jQuery as well. So we're going to grab the minified version here of Lightbox. That should be all we need. We don't need this stuff here. We already have jQuery included. Now there are some images to, scroll through and stuff like that. The X image. So we're going to put that right in our image folder. Okay, and then we need to include the script and the CSS in our index.html. So let's go back into our index.html, and we only need to do this on the home page because we're not using this anywhere else. So up at the top here, let's add another CSS reference, and this is going to go to CSS/lightboxmin.css. And then for the JavaScript, let's go all the way down to the bottom. So let's see, we have jQuery, and then we have our custom script. We're going to want to put this right after the jQuery reference. So right here, let's say script:source, and we want to point to JS/ and then lightboxmin.js. All right, now to implement this, we actually have to do some stuff to the cases, because that's where we want to use this. So we need to wrap these cases in links, because we need to point to the actual image. So this first image here, let's put a link, and let's see, how do we want to do this? We don't need any classes or anything, but we need to point to the actual image for one. So we'll just grab this, and let's put this image 1 inside this link to image 1. and then we just need to add a couple attributes. So we want to say data dash lightbox, and we're going to set this to cases, which is like the category. So if you want to be able to scroll through all the images, they all have to have the same value for data lightbox. And then if you want some text, we can say data dash title, and let's just grab this text here and put that inside here. Okay, so we have this link going to the image with these two attributes around the image. So I'm just going to save this and let's try it out for the first one. So if we go down to cases and we click on this, there we go. Now we'll have to do the same thing for the rest of the images. So what I'll do is copy this link, at least the first A tag, go to the next image, paste that. We want to make sure we add the ending A tag, change this to 2 because we want to obviously point to the same image, and we can leave this. We want to leave the same value for that, and I mean you could put different text here if you want, but it really doesn't matter. It's not real content. So we'll do the same here. This is going to be 3, and we'll wrap that. Okay, next one, paste that in. This is going to be 4. Make sure you put the ending tag on. Then we have cases 5 and A tag. Oops. This will be 6. Just make sure you point to the same image that you're surrounding. The link and the image, make sure they match. 7, A tag, and then the last one will be 8. There we go. So we'll save that, and now you should be able to click on all of these. You should also be able to scroll through because they all have the same data lightbox equals cases, and that's what puts them all in the same group. Alright, so that's it. We're done, and hopefully you enjoyed this project. I know there was some stuff that in this last section that we didn't go over yet, but you'll learn more about stuff like transform and pseudo selectors and stuff like that later on. All right, that's it. Thanks. I will see you in the next section. Hey guys, one last thing before we wrap this project up. I wanted to show you how to create a favicon. So you might see these icons up in the tab sometimes. So I actually have in our project in images, I have a PNG file. However, I'm going to convert it to an ICO file. And there's a tool that I use to do that, which is called Dynamic Drive. So if we search for Dynamic Drive favicon, I don't know the exact URL, so it's right here, the favicon generator, and I've used this for years. So if we just go ahead and choose a file, and I'm going to choose that PNG file and click create icon and download the favicon, and it's going to be this ICO file. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab that, and let me see, let's grab my project, and we'll put that, we're going to put it right in the root, not in the images folder. I'm going to put it right in the root. So just drag that over. So now we have that ICO file, and it also gives us the tag. We just want this link tag. We can go ahead and copy that, and I'm going to put that in my index.html, which I don't think, oh, I do have it still open. So I'm going to go up to the head here and put this right above my style sheets. Okay, so we'll paste that in, and then if we go back to our site, and we just need to reload the cache. So if you're on Windows, I believe it's Shift and F5. If you're on a Mac, it's going to be Shift Control R will reload, and now you can see up here we have the little favicon, and of course you can use any image you want. So I just wanted to throw that in. It's something I forgot to mention, and that's it. Thanks. I'll see you in the next section.